And quite honestly, I wasn't convinced that Zhug was going to do enough to replace the DPS boost that Theodora does. Because, yeah, she comes across as a support hero, but her synergy with Ramsay's to boost the damage of his active signature is very important for that March. Thing that I think all players who run this March need to start doing, regardless of
Ooh.
whether you're free to play or regardless of whether you're an absolute Kraken. Just one thing to note, we got 47 million power in the Ramses March, 48 million power in Belisarius, and now we dropped to 44 million on the Cyrus, but don't let that throw you. Cyrus is right up there with those first two marches.
As you can see, episode 4 is gonna be a banger today from today's interview. And before we dive in, just want to say, obviously, smash a like, comment, and subscribe, guys, to the channel. We do obviously give you Age of Empires mobile content every single day. If it's not guide, interviews, or just some fun content on the way. So with that, let's begin today's episode. But we've got no other than many people from Empire 64, our own home empires. Number one player, we've got our number one player, Caiphus, on the channel. And we're going to be talking quite a lot about some top 5 matches. But before we dive into all of that stuff, obviously, let Caiphus introduce himself, because obviously none of you guys know who he is, who's probably watching this video, but we do. We have good mates.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sneakyy. It's been a long time coming. I've been a really big fan of the channel for quite a while, so very excited to be able to join you.
Yeah, man. It's one of them where, like, everyone keeps saying with these whale insights, especially in the Empire 64, like, when we're getting Caiphus on, I'm like, we're going to get him on, guys. Don't worry. It's just, we've got to figure out the time, because as you can imagine, like, most people who are, I would say, like 150 million plus are generally business guys, right? You kind of run either some sort of business or company, or you're pretty, busy as a person. So it is hard to kind of like line up the time schedules up. But apart from that, we've got a really fun one, because Caiphus actually came out to me with a good topic, which I thought was quite good, because it's gonna kind of parallel and kind of go with what happened last week, because you guys really enjoyed my top 5 marches video, and you really enjoyed what I went up there as more like a low spender, medium spender in the game, and what I consider the best matches in there. And Caiphus went, why not give you maybe a top 5 Kraken marches, because it is obviously a completely different outlook, and it's a different play style too. So I thought it was a really good topic and a really good suggestion. So Caiphus, do you want to like take the show and actually go on with, I don't know, whatever you want to start off with, the first formation or anything in regards to yourself?
Yeah, let's get into some of these juicy secrets. The timing's great on this, because as you mentioned, we just got out of that DD, and so these marches is what are what I ran for that Desolate Desert, and I was able to take top spot in that contest with these marches. So they're pretty tuned for the current meta. So yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. I'm actually excited.
So I'll circle back on some of the battle reports to kind of give some context on how these marches perform relative to each other. But just to go through with a quick overview. So the top march that I'm running right now at 47 million power is without a doubt Ramsay's. Ramsay's, Charlemagne, and Theodora was firmly in the meta before Zhug Liang came out. And I was actually not expecting there to be such an impact to this march from Zhug. He's an absolute amazing addition to this march. The tankiness that he provides, as well as the DPS, is unbelievable. So this march, especially with all the Cyruses running around right now, there's been a lot of shift to pike to kind of counter the Lu Bu era. And so now swords are putting in a lot of work right now in the current meta.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, because you got obviously your Zug there, and we were kind of chatting about this, obviously how much of a difference this match does. And many people will probably ask, and I know you're probably going to say the same thing that I will say, but why do you not run Theodora and Zhu Liang in this match? Because I want to hear what you say before I give you my answer.
Yeah, that is a good question, and I know there was a lot of speculation early on, like, who's gonna get booted from this march? Is it gonna be Charlemagne? Is it gonna get Theodora? Is it gonna be Theodora? And quite honestly, I wasn't convinced that Zhug was going to do enough to replace the DPS boost that Theodora does. Because, yeah, she comes across as a support hero, but her synergy with Ramsay's to boost the damage of his active signature is very important for that march. However, Zhug does outperform her. And Charlemagne, I think one of the main reasons why I went with this march is, as you'll see with my ring setup, Ramsay's obviously very standard with Everflame wings. I think, like, for the mirror match, it's really important to be able to, like, put out that silence early on to shut down an opposing Ramsays, as well as some of the Arthurs you'll find out there. But this ring here, Lofty Mountain, is the reason why I opted for Charlemagne in this march as well. It just does so much work. He has a monster armor and strategy stat, and so it really puts in a lot of work for this march. So again, as we go through some of these marches, you're going to see my ring setups, my gem setups, even my march choices aren't necessarily predicated on what is best in slot for that given march. From a player perspective, when you have a lot of options and a lot of resources, it's all about coming up with the 5 best marches, not the 1 best or 3 best. And so a lot of my choices are, yeah, this ring may be better on this hero in terms of best in slot, but as a whole, for like my 5 march complement, this is where I've kind of landed with a lot of play testing, both in a vacuum, if you will, as well as out on the open field. And to me, the proof is always in the pudding. Once those battle reports in actual real combat come through, then you can kind of validate some of these choices.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because it's one of them things, like, we've hopefully shown enough as well on my live streams during the Pioneer test server. If you guys haven't checked it out, check it out. The Charlemagne is the fact that, like, you need him in the lineups, because if you ran that Theodora Zuliang, as many people hype up and hope to be good, the problem that you find is Ramsay's just doesn't even do enough damage in the march, and the Charlemagne is actually getting that Ramsay's going quicker, right? And because, as anyone will tell you, with a Ramsay's, he starts off a little bit slow in the first opening turns, but then once he starts going off, he doesn't stop, right? And it's all about getting that firing off there, and I think, like, Charlemagne is kind of key for this match. So it's quite nice to see what you're using it to, and what you're saying, especially with the rings as well. The rings set up for the counter of the Everflame wings against, like, the King Arthurs and the other Ramsays out there. Because again, that's advice that I say, so I like the fact that someone else is saying some stuff that I preach out there. So do you want to go to the next match, or do you want to keep talking about the Ramsays? Because I think the next match is quite where you get up a little bit more on, I think, what most people, I would say, run, if I remember correctly, if this is the second march.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So Belly, another fantastic march. I would say if Ramsay's is an S+ march, Belisarius is as well. He's just a fantastic march. This mechanic that was introduced to the game with Elizabeth and converting damage into troop recovery is just it's so game changing. And the real focus with this march, especially when you're talking about open field and running 4 to 5 open field marches, in that context, you really want to tune this march to do 2 things: maximize health, so that every time a troop does get recovered, it's coming back with more health. And of course, DPS, like pure damage output, so that you're getting more of those troops back consistently. So that's really the focus here. And that's why, to get the most damage out of Belly, Radiant Guardian is so key in terms of that. And you want as many damage dealing skills. So Belly's kind of unique in that, I think there's only 1 or 2 other heroes in the game that have 3 secondary strike skills that can all deal damage. And so he just puts it out.
That's very interesting, I was going to say, because obviously there is 2 builds, right? And I think the other build, maybe you might agree, is better for maybe the lower spenders and the medium spenders that run the double attack and Iron Conquering Hoof on Belisarius, because obviously that forces, as you might say, it kind of forces the stacking of the Iron Conquering Hoof. But obviously, because you've got Radiant Guardian, and especially in your position, it's just better just to run raw damage. That's what you're saying?
Absolutely, you know, and I agree. You know, if you don't have Radiant Guardian on belly, you got to have double attack, because it has to be, you have to be proccing his signature skill with a high frequency, right? And so being able to run Radiant Guardian on him frees him up to be able to do even more damage and take advantage of Elizabeth's key kind of mechanic in this march. So, you know, as you see more and more Lubus getting retired, and I know talking to another few heavy hitters in our alliance on 64, for the last DD, there was a few more Lubus that got benched. And I know it's tough because we've all invested so heavily in him. He's been such a good hero to us for so long. But, you know, Cyrus is just such a hard counter. And there's so many good pike marches. And, you know, you won't see it in this lineup, but I have an alternate lineup where I'm running actually 3 different pike marches, and it's hard to do that, you know, unless you have the resources. And even for someone like myself, it's just hard, getting together enough gear to field 3 pike marches. But they are so good right now, making Lubu really, really hard to put on the open field.
So is there anything else in this match you really like in? Because I know I like the synergy that obviously Elizabeth and Ashoka provides to Belisarius, right? Because they're both in their signature skills, buff him in either their activation chance, or obviously the reduction in damage they take, or the assimilation. So is there any like key bits that you prefer? Because I can see like you've got triple offensive as another skill, which I think certain people sometimes take and don't take, depending on the builds they've gone on.
Right. So again, you know, triple offensive is trying to get as much damage out as possible. And if you've got the gems, particularly the extra turn-based damage gems, it's a good option. Now, there's a really great debate going on right now about how the healing gems interact with her recovery mechanic, and I'm still doing some playtesting to see whether you're better off dealing damage and getting more troops back, or you're better off boosting her recovery mechanic with healing gems, which they do interact apparently.
Yes, supposedly they said.
Right, but to be honest, my early testing still shows damage over the healing gems, and that's why I'm running triple offensive. But yeah, I think one more thing before I move to my cheat code for this march. The ring choice for Elizabeth, you've got a lot of really good choices here. So I've run everything from Everflame Wings on her to Lofty Mountain, which is also, she is probably like Lofty Mountain would be best in slot for her just based on her absolute monster armor and strategy stats combined. But I think for my march, trying to get as much damage out, the combination of Radiant Thunder and Radiant Guardian just put in so much work. But here is something that I think all players who run this march need to start doing, regardless of whether you're free to play or regardless of whether you're an absolute Kraken. You've got to have Serpent on Ashoka.
Whoa! Now that's spicy.
So let's break this down, right? So it all starts with the reason why Ashoka is even in this march and why he's been such a good hero since the beginning of the game is his signature skill, Marian Glory. And one of the kind of more unique things, we see it a lot more now, but early on, there weren't too many mechanics in the game that were being double boosted by 2 different attributes, might bonus and strategy bonus. And so increasing the secondary strike activation skill of Belisarius is so important. And so that's where most of your damage from this march is going to come from, is being able to boost that signature skill of Belisarius as much as possible. And, you know, the extra 20% skill damage is also nothing
really
to
nice.
Yeah,
it's quite nice.
Right. But so when you're able to boost both your might and strategy to be able to prop up that signature skill, I mean, his combined might and strategy, you know, we're pushing, 1,570 combined attribute points into this ring. And rings that have an attribute bonus, to me, are so ready to be taken advantage of. You know, we saw that obviously with Ring of Nightwolf. Has an amazing ability to be abused with a high might stat. Arthur early on, and now like there's a plethora of heroes whose might stat can abuse that ring. But so you can just get so much value out of a purple ring with Ring of Serpent on Ashoka. And there's a few other heroes now that I think going forward will be able to kind of be able to really take advantage of that double attribute bonus. So I think, you know, out of all the purple rings, Nightwolf was my previous favorite. Now Serpent to me is a must build. Like it's going to be a relevant ring, I think, for at least 2-3 more seasons.
That's interesting. I think that's going to catch everyone off, because I don't think I've ever seen a Ring of the Serpent on Ashoka. And the thing is, it makes sense, like you're saying, because it is 65 strategy, but it goes off might bonus too. So because of how good both your might is, that's obviously scaling that strategy up even higher than it should have been already, which is actually so interesting. Like, this is why I think people really like this series, even myself, because it's one of them things where you really get to like take a look inside of other people's like thinking and thought process of their marches, because at the end of the day, right, that's all it is. This game is, you know, what do you think is the best way and why? And seeing how different people approach that is just so, it's just so interesting. It honestly gets me really excited. Like, people be watching this and seeing me grinning and smiling, because it is like probably one of my favorite parts about this. So should we go into the third match then, the third one, because this is when I think we are moving on to, is it Cyrus here for our next match, which I think everyone knows about by now.
Absolutely. Cyrus. So just one thing to note, we got 47 million power in the Ramsay's March, 48 million power in Belisarius, and now we dropped to 44 million on the Cyrus. But don't let that throw you. Cyrus is right up there with those first two marches, especially open field. The counterattack mechanic on Warrior Pikes has been something that I feel has been underappreciated for a long time. Swiss Pikeman is definitely the unit choice for this march, in my opinion. I see a lot of people not running Swiss Pikeman, and I find that's unfortunate. But I think it's a great match for this particular march. I think obviously from a ring and gem perspective, I think a lot of people are running it correctly. You know, this ring, Messenger of Destruction, while I didn't love it because basically Cyrus, you know, was the only one that was really taking advantage of this ring in the current meta. I like rings that are flexible to be like thrown on different marches that have long-term value beyond when a certain march will, you know, come and go from being relevant in the meta. So I was kind of reticent to really invest heavily on Messenger of Destruction. But if you main Cyrus and you know, you're looking for a place to stick your gold upgrade materials, this is probably the best bang for your buck in the current meta. It just is such a difference maker having a high level Messenger of Destruction.
Yeah, so what ring are you comboing then on Vlad then? Because okay, there we go. Right, okay, I was gonna say you go in the double DPS route, and you are okay. That's super interesting, because that's obviously meaning then the damage. I believe the damage stacks, because if I read Messenger correctly, it does reduce the normal attack damage of all of your heroes in the troop, but it also increases all of their damage from their passive skills. So that is like a double steroid onto Vlad, as well as, yeah, that's crazy. That's so crazy.
That's a good catch there, Sneakyy, for sure. And, you know, there's a lot of debate here, and I wouldn't say, you know, Ring of Boar is the end-all, be-all for Vlad. And, you know, that could just as easily go on Mansa Musa as well, because there's no stat bonus involved there. But this ring here is also putting in some good work, increasing the might damage dealt. If you're running double DPS and focusing heavy damage output with both Cyrus and Vlad, you're getting a lot of value out of this this might bonus that you're getting out of Celestial Spark. So, and then of course, troop damage. A lot of times people will sleep on the attributes up top here, but the new rings that we got most recently, although maybe the activation abilities weren't as like game changing as some people thought, or maybe would have hoped, the attribute modifiers up here are absolutely crazy. I mean, we've got full troop damage, full troop health. Well, this isn't just commander damage. This is troop damage. Everything's doing more damage with a ring like this.
Yeah, I love that Celestial Spark. It was literally in mine, it was in the top two because I didn't know what were going to be better between the Celestial Spark or technically like the Sage of Judgment, because both rings were like, you could get any of them and you know you could put it on mainly any march in the game because they're that flexible, because one's either going to reduce damage and recover, and the other one is either going to reduce damage and boost up your damage, right? So it's like, which one do you want to pick? And it's nice that you picked it, because I know Steve as well, shout out to Steve, who's also a pikeman man, also is running Celestial Spark on his Warrior Pikeman. So is there anything like else you might run instead of it, or do you actually just think like now it's just too much of a good ring for Warrior Pikeman specifically?
Yeah, until Vlad maybe gets replaced, because I don't see Mansa Musa leaving this march before Vlad does, personally. But as long as you've got two might DPS heroes, I think really Celestial's the way to go.
Right, nice. No, that's sweet. That's sweet. Right, let's go on. Keep the train going, because I think everyone's been loving this. Because the thing is, we've had so much Cyrus on the channel. I'm not even lying. Everyone is playing Cyrus, and it is one of them things, guys, where you don't even need like the most insane kitted out Cyrus, and you'll see how much work it really does on the open field. So is there anything else you want to close on with the Cyrus match before we move on? Or
yeah, just to mention one other alternative, because you know, as good as Cyrus is, and he's very accessible, like you nailed it. You know, a lot of people are able to grab this march and start using it, even at lower star levels. It's doing great work, and that's why we see so much of it. And so I think a lot of people right now are like, yeah, obviously he's a hard counter to Lubu, but then getting ahead of that, you know, who do we run to kind of counter him? And you know, as that kind of develops, there is another alternative. If you didn't get Mansa Musa, and I have some people who come to me and they say, am I too late to get onto the Warrior Pike train with Cyrus? You know, I didn't get Mansa Musa. What do I do now? Should I go back and use gold heads to get him and build it? And you know, as great as it is, especially if you're you know, free to play or a low spender, I'm much more of a proponent of trying to get ahead of the meta than trying to chase it. Yeah. And so another option though, for other players in this slot, if you're only running two pike marches, or if you're willing to run three pike marches, don't sleep on the new MGE hero, QSH. He is an amazing support hero, and he is going to have definitely, he's going to feature in a couple of meta marches going forward. I'm convinced of it. And so tactician pikes, as good as they are, warrior pikes, just so easy to field. Martial pikes are also an incredible march at soaking damage, right? I call them the immortal march, right? If you're running martial pikes right now, they just don't die. And if you're in the game of not losing troops, that's the march for you. The problem is that they don't do any damage, and we're still trying to work out like what kind of utility a tank march like that could have in a rally scenario. Certainly, I use that march instead of Cyrus in Apex. So there's a little hint as to you know, the different utilities, open field versus Apex. Having that kind of tank march up front in Apex is just so valuable, so that you can let your pure damage marches go to work. And I've also managed to sneak Napoleon into my Apex march now, but that might be a topic for another discussion.
Definitely, because that's one of the things with like what you were saying with just the pikemen there, where as many people have been testing out themselves, and we did a little bit of testing with like using auto with Cyrus and Vlad, and it does crazy damage as well. Same with, like, as you said, with QSH in that slot. So it's really interesting, like, you're even willing to experiment technically losing that 30% troop bonus, right, for such a powerful effect like QSH's immunity, which he gives you for the turn, or obviously maybe Otto's full immunity that it gives you if you run in primary. So that's quite nice. So now we've got the I think the match I think everyone probably expects you to have, right? The King Arthur. So as someone who doesn't have King Arthur, can you tell us how it feels to play with him?
King Arthur is I have a special connection to King Arthur just from a lore and myth perspective. I studied Arthurian lore in an academic setting many moons ago
Hmm.
and love the hero. And so I was all in when Arthur was available. I chased him. I didn't chase him as hard as some of the other players early on.
Hmm.
Um, but I did get him. I think I was the second on our server to get Arthur. And early on, his stats were just absolutely incredible. But in terms of his kit, his mechanics, he doesn't do anything exceptionally unique in his kit in terms of his skill mechanics. And so he's definitely a hero that I think continues to get power crept. You'll see like his troop is 43 million five.
Hmm.
And I've got my swords tech pretty much maxed. It is actually fully maxed now, and so he's probably a little underwhelming, I will say. Early on, he was a great hero when we had limited options, but in the meta today, I was really if pikes weren't featuring so heavily, I might have him on the bench right now.
Yeah, because I think that's what a lot of people are saying, right? Especially when I've been watching and spectating different desolate deserts. It's like they'll say you'll know if one empire might win over the other is if the enemy, well, whoever's got the strong King Arthur and who can use their King Arthur to kill the pikeman. Because if he can kill the pikeman, that empire can actually fight through it, and it's down to that weird, like almost like limbo land. Like, can you actually get in there and use it? Otherwise, like, is there no other alternatives? You know what I mean? And like, I know some people try like Miyamoto with like I think like Mehmed in rallies, but I have no personal like experience trying that out. Like, have you tried that out at all, or?
I mean, I ran Miyamoto early on as an alternative to Tribwana because I,
Mhm.
I felt he was always the better choice to Trib in that march. So it was King Arthur, Miyamoto, Constantine for many moons. And then when Lagertha came out, she just did a better job at getting King Arthur to go off earlier and more often than Trib and Miyamoto did. But I came across a Miyamoto main in the last DD against another 200 mil player in the opposing kingdom. They didn't run King Arthur. They ran Miyamoto, Lagertha, and Constantine in that march, and I could not believe how, first of all, tanky and how much damage it was doing. And I was incredibly impressed. And I would say, if you're running Miyamoto as a main in your Warrior Swords instead of King Arthur, like you're not giving up a lot, to be honest. And I think certainly in this meta, I think that Miyamoto is a hero that you're going to see a lot more of coming back to deal with Cyrus. I think, we do have Ramses, and Ramses does an amazing job of just absolutely destroying Cyrus and belly marches.
Mhm.
So I think Ramses is still the top option when you're talking about how do you neutralize like opposing monster pike marches. But of course, with the counter bonus, Arthur is still relevant in that regard. But dropping down to a Miyamoto main for Warrior Swords, in my opinion, you're not giving up much.
Right, that's interesting because I know everyone will say as well with Constantine because I think that is the secret in it because it's weird to say like not many people like use him that often, but when you do use him, he is like almost like a super tank because of how often his skills are going off, right? Because like I know his first skill here where it says recover units, right, which is nice, but it's the fact that it says like every time your commander activates a signature skill, yeah, you're reducing your troop damage taken by 12%. That's what's crazy about him, because especially if you are running, let's just in any scenario you're running say Miyamoto with Trib and Constantine, or Lagertha, Trib, Constantine, Yodit, Trib, Constantine, right? In any of those formations, like the Tribs are always firing off the skills super, super fast, and you can see the Constantine just constantly firing off. Like, he's never not firing off. Like, and I think many people don't actually appreciate that of him. Like, I don't think people realize like how strong that is with this hero, and I don't know if it's gonna stick around with season 6 on his way, because I know you was asking a couple of questions about that, with like Scipio around the corner, who's also gonna kind of like reduce damage and recover, and now give critical strike chance to those warrior swordsmen. But like, I wonder if he still holds up just because of how tanky he can make a match. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I agree completely. He has been kind of a bit of a sleeper since day one, but I think part of that is also because early on, damage reduction and recovery wasn't as much of an emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
I think people were just trying to scramble to find what is the highest DPS march I can put together. Certainly season 1, 2, and that's why a character like a Sid early on with a monster might stat, which incidentally, Sid's might stat has not been power crept, 7 seasons later, or 6 seasons later. Sorry, as we go into season 6. It's amazing to me that his might stat is still as good as the best of might heroes. But so early on, there was a high emphasis on DPS, and I think the utility of Constantine's damage reduction got lost a little bit. I always appreciated it, just because I'm trying to keep my Arthur on the field as long as possible. The time it takes for my Arthur to go back, fill up with troops, and get back onto the field to be smacking people is time lost.
Mm-hmm.
And so the longer I could keep my heroes out on the field, the better field presence I had. If we're trying to take a particular objective, being able to hold field position in a group PvP context is so important in this game, and I think a lot of people don't appreciate that as much as they should. And that's why by the same token, a tank march or Ram, when he first came out, the ability for him to support, I think, is as relevant now as it ever has been. So I agree. I think Constantine will continue to do work for Warrior Swords. I think Scipio has a good chance of replacing him in that role, but I think it's an important role, and that's why I think Martial Pikes still maining a Ram. I mean, you've got 2 MGE heroes in that march with QSH and Ram, and then Otto, who is no slouch himself. It's a great march. The problem is it doesn't do any damage, so it's hard to understand just how good it is. But once you stick that march around, 20 other of your mates' marches, when you're doing Imperial City or fighting for a capital, man, is it game changing. And not to mention an impact of a support march like that from a rally perspective. And that kind of brings us to our next topic, actually, the purpose of my 5th march.
Yeah,
rallies.
perfect. Because I was about to say that. I was gonna go like, do you want to talk about your rally march first, or do you want to show off the battle reports? Like, how did you want to do it? Because I don't mind which way you wanted to do things.
Yeah, let's show off I'm not going to speak long on the rally march. It's something that I've put together more recently. And again, I haven't normally run a dedicated rally march in the past. I've run 5 open field marches, but the current meta has kind of forced me to do this because I can't justify running a cavalry or an archer march in open field in this meta. And so what I found most effective in the last Desolate Desert was having a dedicated archer march to try to deal with some of the sword marches that we're seeing. A Lubu rally march still falls victim to the heavy dose of pikes we're seeing in rallies. And as commander skill doesn't factor into rally combat, Mulan isn't necessarily who you want to go with as a commander for your archer rally march. Teamer, however, has a signature skill that benefits from either being commander or second in command. And so he'll do more damage when he's second in command. He'll do more damage when he's commander, and he'll do damage reduction when he's in second command. And for a player of my level, the way the rally mechanics, targeting mechanics work, I tend to get targeted less early on in the battle because of the way that target matching works. So I try to focus on dealing as much DPS as I possibly can from the back line, if you will, in a rally. So this march is tuned completely with all the talent tree rally skills, attack gems, and just full DPS skills and rings to try to do as much damage as possible.
That's super interesting because even the skills are there, right? So if you go back onto the skills, I think people didn't realize that when you were looking, like you were running weak spot attack and spirited pursuit, which some people used to run back in the day on Lubu, right? In your same position, because they said, well, I don't really need too much critical chance if I could just blow people up with all this damage. And like, yeah, exactly. They said, ooh, interesting. So you really are trying to just stack up as much might damage and blow them up with Star Chaser then and then I'm guessing on Attila you're just running are you running damage skills too? Okay, so that is to make sure the tipper works right. That's super interesting that you've run that. And I think, man, listen, guys, I promise you right now, I have not paid Caiphus at all to run a Mulan match. I promise you guys, like, I have not done, if anything, I'd have made him run a Napoleon match, and he's already mentioned Napoleon earlier, so we know it's not that, right? So that's so crazy, and I think you are right though with what you're saying, because I've been running obviously my archers, and most of the time, to be honest, in the rallies I do run Lubu, but then when I see so many fucking pikemen there, I'm instantly putting in my archers because I feel like, well, my archers are kind of going neutral against the pikeman, and I know there's going to be a bunch of swordsmen coming through, so at least I can target the swordsman and get those kills and then move on to maybe bad neutral matchups, but it's better than terrible matchups there. And especially with the season 6 moving with the new heroes coming in, as many people are suspecting, season 6, season 7 is going to be kind of the rise of warrior swordsmen. So if that's the case, we do want some sort of archer match out there in the rally. So I find that one actually quite spicy. And if you guys have been maybe running something similar, even if you're a lower spender or stuff, I'd love to hear that in the comment section down below, because having that type of match, it does look good. That's exactly what people would probably be running if you wasn't running Lubu. You know, you run this sort of style of setup. Like, maybe you could argue and go, you don't need Timur if you're a lower spender. You could run like Mehmed in the same kind of position almost, just to reduce damage, right?
It's a great call.
So that's really interesting. I really like it. Honestly, I really like it. So should we go into the battle report so you can explain to the guys what you did before we started recording this episode? Because you did just quickly hit with each of the marches just to kind of show and explain a little bit more of your philosophy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So my methodology, when new heroes come out, I'll do some kind of theoretical playtesting, with some different spreadsheets just to kind of try to simulate what I think is going to be good. But, typically within a day or two of the hero being released, I'm able to max them and get them out into the field to do this kind of playtesting. And, while it's not perfect at simulating true battlefield conditions, it's the best for open field. So what I'm running is the supply depot challenge, and I'm just re-challenging against max levels. So you're fighting against multiple marches in the open field with a variety of different unit types, and try to see how each of these marches perform against the same target. And so the first one that I sent here was Ramsay's, and so what I'm looking at is, lightly wounded out of the entire battle. He came away with 8,500 lightly wounded. So that's kind of like what I'm looking at to see is, by the time you've defeated the march, how many deads have you or wounded have you taken? And so we can see here, if we go into one of the comparisons, that particular battle lasted about 14 seconds. So these are pretty quick battles. So unfortunately, until they come out with some more robust NPCs to test against, we have a limited amount of data per battle to really dive into. These used to last, closer to 40 seconds to a minute, but that just goes to show how much stronger the heroes we have today are compared to what they were 2-3 seasons ago. So comparatively, we have here Belisarius, and so just about double the lightly wounded, 16,000. But again, this is a march that, while it may not do as much damage up front, is going to have way more staying power in that it's recovering troops as it does damage. So that's I think a little misleading. I would say that its overall utility is right up there with Ramsay's, and with the current meta right now, this is probably if I'm not running a dedicated rally march, this will be the first march that I'll stick into a rally is my Belisarius pike march.
Right, that's
And then
interesting. No, just to say it's just
yeah,
interested. Carry on. I'm loving it.
so then here, the third march that we tested was the Cyrus march, and that's why I say, even though he's giving up 4 million power in terms of the supposed march power, which don't hang your hat on the march power. That can be misleading sometimes. It's a generally decent indicator of where the march is, but there's so much situational utility of a march, whether it's open field, whether it's rally, who you're fighting against. And that goes back to a comment you made earlier, Sneakyy, that I think was really good, about the richness of the tactics and strategy in this game. And it's there's so many different combinations of marches, and even within a march, how to run it, that I think with all those moving pieces, there's a real, a fun opportunity for people who like to try to min-max their marches to kind of try to get it right and find something unique. So this is where, this Cyrus march is right up there. It's only taking 13,000 lightly wounded, and again, only 17 seconds to complete that fight. So those are the clear top three. Then we get to the Arthur march.
Yeah,
which interestingly,
everyone's gonna be like, "What?"
56,000 lightly wounded, and I will say, in the enemy troop comp that you're fighting in the supply depot challenge, you get 2 pike marches there, so you would expect that swords would even do better. And even with that advantage, Arthur feels like he's like legitimately been power crept
It's
by the other top 3 meta marches at this point.
it's so crazy when you think about it too, right? Because like how much it costs to get King Arthur, but when you just read King Arthur's ability on paper, like you would assume it's a problem, right? Because he is negating 50% of stats. Like he's negating 50% of your base attributes of your units, and he's hitting you harder because of that, right? But because of how strong, as you said, the latest heroes have been through just damage reduction, not even just damage, just like how good the supports have been over the last few seasons, has made like the damage that we've had from Ramsay's from season 3, right? Cyrus season 4, like it's made them like shine, and it's even allowed like players technically at all levels to choose some sort of formation and go, do you know what? Maybe I want to run Barbarossa because I don't want to run Vlad because I don't want to go that route. Maybe I want to run something else instead of King Arthur. We can run Miyamoto for many people, right? And it's nice to see. I think we're in that position in game where I do think like there is, as many people argue in the comment section, right? There's probably the best match of the best formation type if you want to try and really mid-max down that route. But I think for the large majority of people, like we're in a position where you can, like you said, make a match, it can be competitive, and some people can just have fun with it too, and it doesn't have to be super specific. So you've got the best ring in the best hero slot with the best skills calculated down to the teat, so I've loved it. Honestly, I absolutely loved this so far. So is there anything else you want to close on or talk about before we maybe wrap up some stuff?
I think that's very well said, and I think you've kind of really nailed the state of the game right now. I would just say closing remarks on Arthur. If you're a new Kraken to the game, or you've been kind of chasing him, I think there's so many, with all the additional tech trees that have been introduced and different upgrade mechanics with mounts and ornaments. I think there's just so many better places to stick your resources than going after a single hero whose stats have been somewhat power crept at this point. I think we've been promised a new mythic hero on a number of occasions. I think we're all still waiting for that. I know Hatshepsut was supposed to come to the game a while ago, and I think the timeliness of an archer march to kind of hoist archers out of the doldrums that they're in right now would be super welcomed. But I think, in terms of where the meta is going, and this is probably, a great topic for a future discussion, because I think the game is at such an interesting point right now, in terms of where the options are for kind of pushing the meta forward. But I think, you nailed it. I think swords, get dust off your Miyamotos, get ready for your Scipios. I think, the next season is going to see a resurgence there, and then it will demand archers down the road. And hey, maybe we're going to see some Ramsay's players flipping from swords to archers in the near future as well.
That'd be funny, wouldn't it, to watch? That would be hilarious to watch. I'm not even gonna lie. So with that, honestly, guys, say thank you to obviously Caiphus in the comment section down below. Obviously, thank you, Caiphus, from myself. I've been trying to get this sorted for so long, and obviously I know how much obviously your time's precious, man, with that. So everyone, hopefully you've learned something today. Hopefully you've enjoyed a little bit more of a higher power players look at the game, and how obviously he's tackling the game with 4 main open field matches with his spicy rally batch that we've seen at the end. And let me know what you guys think to all of that. And if you guys want to support the channel, you know what to do. You can check out the link in the description down below for my Eneba link. Just click on it. Anytime you obviously buy, you'll get that good old cash back and support me directly. So till the next video, guys, stay safe, stay sneaky, guys. Peace out.